Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Menon?
Here.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Ms. Sweeney?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Mr. DeCanta?
Here.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Keown?
Here.
Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. Could we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The mission statement of the public schools. The Newburyport Public Schools are committed to the intellectual, physical, social development, and engagement of every student. Within a culture of high expectations for individual and group learning, our students experience rigorous academic challenge, are intellectually curious, and express themselves creatively. Our schools are, Our students enhance their well-being by applying knowledge and skills about nutrition, fitness, and healthy behaviors. Our schools are an inclusive and supportive community. As part of this community, our students demonstrate values of personal integrity, sensitivity, and social responsibility. Our schools partner with parents and community in significant ways to help achieve this mission. Members of our school community, teachers, parents, staff, and administration support this mission every day, in every classroom, on every field of play, and in every activity.
Thank you. This brings us to our first session of public comment. It is an opportunity for anyone to be heard by this school committee. Public comment is not conversational, but rather an opportunity for you to make a statement. If you wish to provide a comment, please raise your hand to be recognized and join us at the table and begin by stating your name and address. Is there anyone who cares to make a public comment? Dr. Orlando.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive. About 2 or 3 months ago, at a period of public conversation, just as we had this evening, I brought up the fact of the drug abuse at the high school. And I was told that it's actually decreasing. And we all knew that was false. I've emailed you a lot of emails in response to the current dilemma that appeared in the local press. I think you heard some things here this evening that are real concerning. You know, in response, I've heard from some or all of you that kid wasn't arrested in Newburyport, or it's a community problem, and I was given a flyer to the community farm coming up. You know, there are statistics out there that 1 out of 2 high school seniors are using drugs, but others of you inform me it's only 10% who use it 15 plus times a month. You people need to gather the facts. That's what it's all about. It is a school problem, and that is in your domain and your responsibility. It's a policy issue. And so, as I tell you always, get the facts and nothing but the facts. Now, you may think I sit here trying to advocate for punishment. That's perhaps the perception you get of me. But it ain't about punishment. It's about rehabilitation. What about the kid who gets caught using drugs? Is he asking for somebody to reach out to him? I don't know. It's about education and prevention, but more importantly, it's about protection of the other students in our schools, because we profess to have safe and healthy environments in our schools, in our classrooms, in our athletic fields. And so you people have an obligation to gather the facts, because I know of instances that are concerning when freshmen are drug along with seniors on athletic teams. Are you aware, are we suspending these students such that we don't compromise the MIAA rules, such that the rest of our students are going to be denied participation in the league? Are you aware of the fact that the MIAA justifies random drug screening, perhaps of teams that are known to have a high incidence of drug use. You need to collect your facts. Ms. Heath talks to you about what's being done. I asked the question because, quite honestly, I don't know what's being done. Because of my vocal nature, my children don't wish to speak to me on any issues dealing with what goes on at the high school. That's a true fact, okay? But I think you need to do something, really. It wasn't too long ago in previous administrations when some of you school committee members will remember one of the members would petition for a vote to suspend public comment and open it up to public dialogue. People want to speak to you. We're denied that opportunity time and time again. There's not enough time. You people control that. You are our elected officials. Think about it. I want you to do something. There are critical issues out there that still remain. This is one of them. Sciences at the high school are. Parents just recently met again with Dr. Kerbel. Some school committee members were in attendance. Some of the things that you were led to believe that are occurring could not be substantiated. You need to validate and verify what you're informed of on pieces of paper that are distributed here. You got to get the facts. We haven't heard since that committee meeting about 990 for all our students, have we? That's another critical issue that you need to be reviewed regularly. So what do I want you to do? I want you to get the facts and do something. I want you to dialogue on critical issues. I want you to have the dignity and the courage to stand up and make a motion to petition to discuss something, especially if you have what is the dissenting viewpoint. You must deliberate, and the only time you should back down and shut up is when that has occurred, you've petitioned, you've taken a vote, and you represent the minority opinion. We need to have more public dialogue here. You took witness to that just this evening. And so those are the comments that I would like to share with all of you people tonight, because you're the only ones who can do anything about it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Mr. Keown, do we have warrants this evening?
Yes, we do. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $8,018.61 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We have another. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $413,636.63 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Excuse
Warren?
me. There was a conflict on that one, I think. Mayor Hall.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, there is a conflict with the mayor.
Is it-
We need to-
Thank you. Let's move on to the minutes now. You have before you the minutes of the organizational meeting from Monday, February 6, 2012.
Motion to approve?
Second,
Second.
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes as written. The next item on our agenda is Alex, who is not here. So we'll skip that part. We'll move right on to our school improvement plan presentation. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Kerbel.
Thank you. Alex did email me and was having transportation issues, so anyway, I'll connect with Alex and a later date. I want to talk about the school improvement plans, and I'm going to ask our principals to do is individually come up with their school council representative and talk about their school improvement plans. Now, the school committee members, you know what we did last year. Last year, our principals updated the first year of a 2-year school improvement plan. This year, this is the second year of the plan that they will talk about. These are not going to be long debates, long discussions. I've asked each principal to speak for 5 minutes about the plan, and then allow conversation among school committee members. Because when we have the meeting, the budget meeting at each school, it will allow you more time at that point to be able to talk about the school improvement plan and the budget. Okay, so I'm going to change the order a little bit. I'm going to ask Amy Sullivan to come up to represent the Brown School. Amy's a principal of the Brown School with her school representative, and she can introduce them. Sure.
Before we think, Mr. Nathan has a question.
I just wanted a point of clarification, Dr. Kerbel. So what the principals are presenting tonight is the results of year 2 of the SIP. They are not yet presenting the SIP, which will be starting with this upcoming school year. That will be presented at the budget meeting that we're having. The school councils are developing a new 2-year plan that will be brought forward probably when we come back to school in September. This is the school improvement plan to finish this school year. So I'm a little confused there. If we don't have the SIP, on what are they basing their budget, and how are we going to tie the budgets to the SIPs?
Well, that's what, you're going to hear this tonight.
Well, this is the end of this school year. This is the SIP that is finishing up at this point in time. This is history that we're being presented now. Is that correct? Not looking forward.
This is how I'll tell you how I look at improvement. I look at improvement as not an end time. It's a continuous improvement progress. So,
except that you mentioned that this is a 2-year process, and that what they are presenting today is the end of this 2-year plan.
Yes.
What I am saying is, when do we get to see the new plan? Because I'm assuming that new plan is would set the context for their budget requests. And maybe that assumption is wrong, but I believe that is part of the purpose of the SIP.
Well,
Mr.
I tell you, let me just. And that my suggestion is to allow the principals to go through this process. Okay, and then at the end, if it doesn't meet your satisfaction or it's unclear, okay, then we can talk about it. That will make more sense to me.
You know, I want to say that I'm looking forward to hearing this. I don't have an expectation that we're going to be hearing about history and, you know, that we're going to be hearing about what's happened in the past. My expectation, and we'll find out if it's right, is that what we've been doing over the last 2 years is going to fully inform the budget process, and articulating that in a plan is something that, you know, that will be forthcoming. So.
Okay. Well, it is a little history in terms of what we've accomplished for the 2011-2012 school year. So what we're going to present tonight should give you a continuation picture of where we left off last year. But before I begin, I just wanted to introduce Liz Pierce, who's a parent representative on the Brown School Council, Meg Foster, who's one of our kindergarten teachers, and also a teacher representative for the council. We also have Lisa Keene, who is one of our special education and ADA teachers. She's not here with us tonight. And Anya Brunick, who is a parent of a kindergarten student, a parent representative on our school council. So in spirit, we're all here, but with my 2 lovely representatives for moral support. Each of the elementary school improvement plans have 4 categories. The first being achievement in learning, the second, safe and supportive environment, the third, parent and community engagement, and the fourth, health and wellness. We each have objectives under those 4 categories. The document that you have here, we've already reported out half of that last year, where we were in our first year of the school improvement plan. And I left that in here for you just so that you could see everything that we accomplished in the first year, and as a reminder that anything that I talk about tonight are things that we still were working towards in our accomplishment of the 2-year plan. So if you look at the program category, achievement and learning, there are 3 objectives. The first objective is to increase and enhance inclusionary practices. And if you skip down to about the middle of the page, it says what we have achieved in 2011 and 2012, and that's where I'd like to focus tonight. First of all, in terms of supporting inclusionary practices, we had teachers participate in workshops very recently, actually this month, with Dr. Susan Craig, who many of you know is a consultant that works with our district in her 5th year now. And we wanted her to focus on helping children with social, emotional, mental health, compliance issues. And so she presented a 2-part series to teachers on the topic of helping children who hurt and to help develop classroom strategies for behavior. So that was one area that we worked on this year. As you know, I came here in December along with the school council at that time and some of the preschool teachers to present a new preschool model, which very thankfully you approved and adopted for the 2012-2013 school year. With that model, there was a great deal of parental outreach. It included surveys, presentations, we had coffee hours, we did newsletters, we sent home articles, and it was all under the guise of educating parents about what is an integrated preschool program and model. So we felt that that was a big piece of helping to hit that goal area in terms of increasing and enhancing inclusionary practices. This year, I'm a published author. I wrote an article for the Newburyport Mothers Club talking about how to choose an early childhood program for your child. And within that article, I talked a lot about, what does inclusion mean? What does an integrated program look like? So that was a good parental outreach point to support that goal. I've also met this year with the director of the Pentucket Early Intervention Program, which has a lot of carryover from when children are exiting that program at age 3 with special needs and beginning in our preschool program. And sometimes it's not always the easiest, it's not always as seamless as we would like it to be in terms of where they're leaving with their caseworkers and then beginning in their public school setting in terms of how that works and what will the team meetings look like, and how do we enroll children into the program. And so we've worked during the course of the beginning part of this year to help streamline that process and help educate some of the caseworkers that work with EI, and conversely, EI help educate us as to, in terms of what their expectations and their goals are. And then lastly this year, we're getting ready for this month, the preschool teachers in a public school integrated setting are really expected to provide trainings to other area preschool teachers in the community to support them on integrated therapies. And so coming up on March 22nd, they are offering a night training to all the local preschools we've invited, and the topic is universal supports for learning. And they're going to cover areas such as fine motor skills, sensory integration in the classroom, language development, behavior supports, how to use BoardMaker or the PECS, which stands for a Picture Exchange Communication System, to create visual schedules. So we're looking forward to that, and we really got a very nice response from the community. So in terms of what we've accomplished over the past 2 years, we feel that we've accomplished quite a bit in increasing and enhancing inclusionary practices going forward. We want to continue to enhance our co-teaching models between therapists, special educators, and classroom teachers. We're hoping to really do more of that around the literacy work that we've been doing with guided reading and the Daily 5 and Literacy Center activities. And we want to continue to provide parent outreach to parents in terms of how they can help support us in the school with some behaviors that we may see with children first entering into the formal setting and getting used to norms of school, and as well provide them maybe with some support of how to address behaviors in the home setting. So those are some things that we hope will go into the 2012-2014 school improvement plan. So does it make sense for me to just go right through, or do you want to ask questions at each topic? Go right through. Okay. So the second objective under achievement and learning is to strengthen the depth of the implementation of the comprehensive literacy model. And in a nutshell, we've done a tremendous amount of work in this area. If you flip on to the second page, you'll again see what we have accomplished in 2011-2012. First of all of the kindergarten classroom teachers this year voluntarily, on a 100-degree temperature day in July, took part in professional development on something called the Daily 5, which is an organizational system that fosters literacy independence. And what it talks about is purposeful center activities. So children at their centers during that block of the day participate in 5 different centers: read to self, read to someone, work on writing, listen to a story, and word work. And these centers give students more opportunities for pure reading and writing, increasing their independence by actually reading and writing and not necessarily being involved in like busy work or worksheets and things like that. And because the children learn the expectations of how to be independent in the classroom setting, teachers were able to begin small strategic group work and guided reading lessons earlier this fall. One of the reasons we were able to do that is Title I support began in October at the Brown School. Typically that has not happened at the kindergarten level until January or February of the school year, and it has made a tremendous difference. This year we have been able to provide intensive interventions to students right from the start. The district's pre-K to 3 literacy coach, Emily Russin, worked with teachers this year to help increase our phonemic awareness and the skills that students have around phonemic awareness, because we knew that was a weakness based upon some first grade scores. She helped to develop a pacing guide along with our curriculum advisory board leader, Robin O'Malley, and they aligned that pacing guide with our Fontes and Pinnell phonics program. So the teachers have had ongoing professional development in that area on early release days this year, and they've worked to plan activities and refine their lessons in that area. They've even gone so far as to create this bin that we have, and the teachers add materials to it and some ready-to-go lessons and activities, and they've really supported each other in that area. As a result of that, our DIBELS scores, which we give 3 times a year, DIBELS stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, have shown tremendous gains at our mid-year assessment in January. Our composite scores, which all the subtests go into, show that at mid-year, 83% of all kindergarten students were at benchmark, 11% were considered below benchmark or in the intensive category, and 6% well below benchmark. You can see there I've broken out the subtests. I won't go into that for now, but to give you a comparison, incoming first graders from the previous year, actually we only had 38% of the children at benchmark, so we far exceeded where the children were in the fall at mid-year this year in January. So we're very, very happy with that. The next objective under achievement and learning is to complete the curriculum mapping process in math science and the history social studies. If you skip down to what we've achieved in 2011 and 12, teachers have implemented the investigations math program fully as our new program this year, and we have aligned it with the new Common Core standards and have done curriculum mapping and math for that. And preschool teachers have done some mapping as well, because the Common Core standards for the first time have included standards for older preschoolers. And so they've been working quite a bit in terms of delineating their curriculum from what a first year in preschool looks like and a second pre-kindergarten year. So that's been new this year. We will be meeting over the next few months to do some more vertical articulation between the preschool mapping process and the kindergarten mapping process on the early release days. And we are not quite there with science and social studies mapping yet. It was a goal, but we're not there yet, and so that's something that we would like to carry forward into the next 2-year plan. The next category is safe and supportive environment, and this objective is to continue to foster a climate of safety and respect for all members of the school community and continue to provide an inviting environment for students, parents, and the community. So if you flip again, to the next page, what we have accomplished in 2011 and 2012. We've improved our dismissal procedures by utilizing many different doors in the building and continuing with a sign-out procedure for all students. We have installed new keypads on 2 of the doors at the school, allowing the building to be safe and locked, but to give staff access to it with codes, much like some of the other buildings in town. Dr. Englander this year, as you know, presented an anti-bullying seminar for all parents to the district. We will be doing more formal lockdown training in the spring, the next month or so. CPI training was offered to all teachers, and we have had at least 5 staff members participate in physical restraint and de-escalation training this year. The Culture and Climate Committee conducted a survey to see sort of how we were doing in that area, and it came back with a good response that the staff would like to participate in some team building activities, and actually Andy Egermont, who's in the audience tonight, has offered if we would like to help us with that. We haven't yet talked about it yet, we just sort of finished that survey, but something that we're looking forward to. And in preparation for the new school improvement plan, this school council is hoping to disseminate a survey to parents and staff, just sort of a needs assessment to help inform where to go from here. The next category is parent and community engagement, and this is to increase and enhance communication among members of the Brown School community at large. And so what we've accomplished this year, I've used the Blackboard Connect and NTI system for everything. I think everyone is probably sick of hearing my voice over the phone, but we've really upped the ante on that and utilized that quite a bit as reminders, both phone calls and email. Not on here, but we put together a year-round magnet for parents with the school calendar because our schedule is so intricate with all the different programs at the Brown School. That has been very helpful. And we've also planned a number of social events and hopefully traditions that will carry forward for the Brown School. Some of them have been a recent Parent-Students Valentine's Day brunch. We've also had a Halloween Boo Bash, a family pizza night, a Salvation Army donation night, a family movie night, a book fair, and we're starting right now to prepare for our community guest reader day on Friday and bring your parent to school night on March 28th. Additionally, we've also added monthly spirit days to our calendar, and our Brown School beer mascot has made several appearances. Hard copies of most school notices have been sent home in addition to the Take Home Tuesday link. We did make a decision for really important notices to send home hard copies at the first year of the children's schooling and in terms of getting parents acclimated to the school and not only relying on the electronic copies. And parents have volunteered as parent partners during our lunch and recess. And the parent volunteer program this year provided some shirts and recently some scarves, but we really haven't had the need to wear them with this weather so that you can identify those parent volunteers. And then the last category is health and wellness. And the objective here is to improve student health and wellness through education of students, parents, and staff, and to continue the implementation of the district wellness policy. We haven't done a whole lot around that this year other than just to promote awareness of the policy. We have relayed expectations about the school wellness policy during our open house in September. We had the nurse leaders and the school nurse talk about the wellness policy at both of our preschool and kindergarten information nights. It's highlighted in the parent and student handbook and also through periodic notice reminders that are sent home. We also have the physical education teacher and the school nurse annually join forces and present and do some hand washing lessons and some hygiene lessons with the children. So that's where we're at, and welcome to any of your questions.
Thank you, Amy. Does anyone have questions?
I'd just like to thank you. I think it was very thorough, SIP.
Thank you.
There were 2 things that jumped out at me that weren't necessarily related to your improvement plan, but they were just things that I'd like to get a little more information about.
Sure.
One is, how do you practice a lockdown in the Brown School? That's but you don't have to answer these right now. There are things that maybe you can, I don't know, maybe knock you off guard. And the other was, and maybe Karen might have that information. I'm a little surprised as we're doing CPI certification at the Brown School. Is that specifically?
So let me start with the lockdown.
You
First of
don't-
all,
I mean-
part of the lockdown is training for the staff,
Of
and certainly
course,
to
of
go over
course.
protocols. We haven't yet, since I have been here, done a mock lockdown with the students, but I do think in particular, if we were ever to go in a lockdown, our little kids would probably be the ones that would need the most practice or understanding of how to be inside the school and to be safe and to be quiet and what that means. And so generally, in my past experience, that's how I've always presented it to children, is we do a fire drill to go outside of the school to be safe, a lockdown, and we wouldn't call it that, we call it like a secure in place, is something where we have to stay inside our classroom to be safe. So we don't really go into great detail, but we go into sort of what you need to do and what you should do. And it's, to them, it could be just the protocol for going down the hall and lining up, and what that looks like. But we'll work closely, likely with Deirdre, to, think about how we want to present that. But it is on my mind that it is something that I would like to do with little ones in an appropriate manner. And CPI training, we do a lot of de-escalation. CPI, the crux of the program is de-escalation.
Right.
It's how do you take a child that's very upset in an emotional state and try to get them into a more calm place. I mean, you hear the word restraint. We're not restraining children, but sometimes we do, in a very rare instances, need to put our hands on a child to make them safe, particularly if they're bolting or if they're upset or they're hurting themselves or others. And so the CPI is really about, if you do have to touch a child, how can you do that so that the child is safe and that you're safe? But most of the training is simply de-escalation. You're welcome.
Any other comments? Mr. Bennett, sorry.
For the literacy and co-teaching work that you would like to carry forward, what professional development is already in place, and do you anticipate additional professional development around that for your staff?
Sure. I think that there has been a lot of professional development over the 5 years that we've had Dr. Craig on board in terms of the different courses that she's offered, whether they be inclusionary practices or integrated therapies. I think a lot of that work is sort of, what does the integrated therapy look like? What is a good inclusionary practice? I think that there is a very good understanding of that now, and what I'd like to see go forward is how do you partner those integrated therapies or those inclusionary practices so that it is a little bit more seamless. When I say promoting that more, it doesn't mean that inclusion isn't happening. It's happening all the time. A speech and language pathologist might go into the room and work with a small group of children, but how can we really do more co-teaching? Like, could it be an introductory lesson about a skill where maybe a special education teacher and a classroom teacher are really just going back and forth and hand in hand. And I think that that's where we'd like to bring it to the next level.
Mayor Holiday?
I think your digital scores are very impressive, and do you attribute it to the Daily Five, the phonics programs, the coaches? This is a dramatic shift. Could you just talk a little bit about what influenced that from your perspective, Amy?
Well, I think that the data really spoke for itself. We weren't doing dibbles at the kindergarten level last year, and so when we found out the first grade scores, of course they were not what we were hoping for, but I think that really was a wake-up call that maybe we needed to be a little bit more consistent between classroom and classroom. So everyone had the same curriculum, but there's always a little bit of autonomy in terms of how it's interpreted. So we really worked hard with the literacy coach that can we develop a pacing guide? And so the pacing guide was very clear. We also brought the faculty back every month and said, sort of, how are you doing with the pacing guide and where are you at? And that opened up dialogue. I think that the Daily Five has certainly made our literacy centers much more purposeful, and not that they weren't in the past, but they're really geared to, if a child is sitting there reading to themselves, they're being exposed to literature and words consistently on a daily basis. And there's all sorts of research and brain research that shows how fluent a reader you are just simply by how much exposure you have to reading and writing. So I think it was a number of things, but mostly I think it was the staff. The saying that we're going to pull together and, we're really talented and we're going to do this, and they've done it and they've delivered, and so now we have our phonemic awareness and we're going to go on and tackle something else, likely writing next, and a little bit more guided reading. But we knew that that was a pretty clear indicator of where we needed to start, and so I think with our data teams this year, which actually I didn't even write about, and starting to look at student work and scores and interpreting them has really, made the focus of our faculty meetings and in-service days very clear.
Very impressive, thank you. Thank you, Amy. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
I tried to talk as fast as I could.
You decided? Is it Christina or?
No, it's fine. Go ahead. Yeah, it's fine.
Lorraine Marks, principal of the Mullen School.
Good evening. I do not have school council members here tonight. Being the new person, I thought they were supposed to come when I presented the budget and the new school improvement plan. However, they have reviewed this with me, so they are on board.
That's good. I want to let everybody know that Amy Sullivan went first last year, set the tone for all the principals. And so Lorraine, no pressure on you, that was your first one. Okay, but we'll make sure everybody smiles while you present.
I guess so, yeah.
We were asked to try to keep this to 5 minutes, so I will do my best to be as succinct as I can. And what I'm going to do is try to highlight some of the things that happened this year that may have been new pieces. I did not write the last school improvement plan, so there are pieces I continued and there are some new pieces that we put in. So in terms of the first program category, Achievement and Learning, one of the biggest things we had happen over the course of this year was the RTI piece. That's something that the district has been looking to work on. We have an RTI team at the Mullen School, and we talked about what was working, what wasn't working, and then the group of us went to a RTI workshop together, and we really all felt that it was a great program, and we worked with Dr. Craig, and we have adopted that RTI process for our school. And we have introduced that at a faculty meeting. We've introduced the forms that go with that, and we have begun to meet on that. Short-term interventions are being discussed for students. Progress monitoring is being done, and analysis of data to look at that student progress has started. The other piece that we continued to do were some common assessments. We did interim assessments for both math and ELA. And we met as a staff to look at the results of those assessments in terms of what's working and what's not working for our students. And we generated a list of things to do to help inform instruction and improve student progress based on those interim assessments. The GMATE was given this year, and we used that data as well. And we continue to use the benchmark assessments for the literacy piece. The other thing that we're working on continuing and progressing with is discussing transition needs for students leaving Bresnahan and entering the Mullen School, and also leaving the Mullen School and entering NOC. In terms of inclusionary practices, in particular our special needs students. And we will continue to look at that placement process as well as scheduling for those students. And then what we want to continue to achieve into 2013 would be to continue to address the common assessments and develop those and how we use that data throughout the course of the school year. Continue to work on the co-teaching models, look at some different scheduling options in order to maximize the special education teachers' impact on student learning and achievement, and to continue to develop the literacy closet with appropriate materials for students at all needs. I think Amy has done a fantastic job in terms of improving the kindergartners' reading skills, I think at the moment we're still dealing with some of that lag that we had in reading skills, and we saw that on some of the data from the early school years. So we do need some materials that are on lower levels in our literacy classes still for our students. The next objective was to strengthen the depth of implementation of the comprehensive literacy model. So the literacy model is being implemented in all classrooms, and the coaches model continues to evolve to meet the needs of both students and teachers. We continue to use the benchmark assessment system. We do have an exciting event coming up. Ralph Fletcher, who is a well-known author for children as well as for adults, is going to be at the school on April 2nd. He's going to be presenting with all of our students, and we are working in conjunction with the Newburyport Literacy Festival. They have provided 2 copies of his books for every one of our students. Our 4th grade classes are working with Susan Gaylord Kapinski, and they're going to be doing an installation in front of the library on poetry, which is part of their curriculum. And Ralph will be meeting with staff. We're going to have our faculty meeting that afternoon, and he will be working with staff on writing, teaching writing for students. So we're really excited about that. 5 4th and 5th grade teachers, the literacy coach and myself, all attended a Lucy Calkins training for grades 3 through 5 units of study and reading. We're very excited about that. We are hoping to adopt some of that into our literacy curriculum. And in conjunction with Ralph Fletcher and our event this Friday, Read Across America, we are getting some more mentor texts, which was a goal of the school improvement plan last year. This Friday, our literacy coach wrote a grant for Read Across America, and we have people coming in. We have books that have been purchased. The book is the Lorax this year, but there's also another book that we're going to be sharing with students. And we have David Hall from the Tannery coming to do an assembly with the students, also about green living and green initiatives in Newburyport. So we're pretty excited about all of that. What we hope to achieve in 2013, going along with that, is to continue to acquire resources for the literacy closets. Angela and I have been talking, and I've contacted Columbia Teachers College to see if we could get a trainer out here to work with us around the Lucy Calkins program. The writing program is already bought and is being implemented this year in pieces. It's a process for teachers to get to learn all of that. We're looking to have training for both the reading and the writing programs. And we would like to have teachers begin to work on 3 select reading and writing units next year to really start to master those pieces. And to continue to work with the ELA interims to look at student work and determine implications for instruction. In terms of the objective of completing curriculum mapping processes in math, science, history, and social science, the math map, I think, is pretty well set. We are working on finishing the science map for this year. We continue to work with Mike Koski, who is a consultant who was here last year. We are working on both developing inquiry-based lessons and on developing common assessments. And we are using the MCAS-style questions to develop those assessments, so the students will be familiar and comfortable with that when they meet that in 5th grade for the testing. Right now, the 4th grade has completed the life science common assessment, and he was here today, so they're in the process of finishing the electricity common assessment. The 5th grade teachers have just started that work, and they're working on rocks and minerals and astronomy right now. In addition, all the teachers participated in 5 days of math professional development, Andrew Chen, and the teachers also used the math interim to look at student work and develop implications for instruction. What we want to achieve going into 2013 is to purchase social studies texts for grade 4. With the turnover in the schools, we don't have a text in 4th grade. We do have a text in 5th grade. And then to begin to work on the history and social science maps, and also to build stronger connections between literacy skills and science and social studies in accordance with the new Common Core standards, in particular around informational text. The program Safe and Supportive Environment, that category, what we have achieved is we continue with second step and steps to respect curriculum. We also spent a good deal of time as a faculty in the fall developing school-wide behavioral expectations. We initiated Final Friday assemblies focusing on culture, social, emotional, and behavioral issues. Myself and a teacher attended a responsive classroom workshop, and the district provided the anti-bullying presentation by Dr. Engelman in January. What we hope to achieve in 2013 is to begin to implement the responsive classroom program at the Mullen, to provide PD around responsive classroom to staff, and to train 2 teacher leaders in responsive classroom, one at each grade level. And then also to work with counselors to develop some resources and curriculum to address issues of race, because that is something that I have seen come up a little more frequently, and so I've been working with counselors about some of those issues. In terms of parent and community involvement, we continue with the Take Home Tuesday, the NTI phone calls. We did have teacher conferences. New things were we held the first winter band concert and chorus concert this year for the Mullen School. With parent support, the Green Team continues a recycling initiative at Mullen, and it's bigger than it was. The final Friday assemblies have involved community members, including the Newburyport Recycling Coordinator. The can drive for the food pantry. We had a military speaker in, and the kids wrote letters to the military. The PTO has worked really hard at the Mullen this year. We had the first ever Mullen Winterfest. We had a hip hop dancer there, which he was amazing. The kids enjoyed it a lot. It was a fun night, and a lot of the teachers showed up as well. It was a good event. We have some sports nights. We have a bingo night coming up, so they're really doing a lot more events for the kids to know in the school, which has been good. And then in terms of health and wellness, similar to Amy, not a whole lot different this year. We will be looking at a parent survey for next year around nutrition, fitness, and healthy choices. Is it 5 minutes? I'm losing my voice.
Would you like a hall?
No, I'm okay. Thank you, Doug.
Any comments?
Questions or comments?
Mr. DeCanto?
I would like to just make a comment on the particularly parental involvement. It's not an easy thing to develop and maintain parental involvement in a 2-year block. As soon as people are getting excited about what they're doing, they're moving on. However, having witnessed both the winter concert and the dance, it's very exciting to see the way that you're developing those things around the school. The excitement from the kids and the parents to get involved in that kind of thing, whether bringing back the chorus with parental volunteers and a home run.
Weren't they fantastic? And that was not a whole lot of practice. They were really impressive.
Yeah. And it's so important to have that instruction and that participation so early, so that we can take it on and have our farm teams, so to speak, for the middle school and for the high school. And so I truly commend you and your staff and your parents for the work that they've done and the cultural aspects of the school. I know it's probably one of the hardest challenges you have, but keep going, because obviously you're doing some right things.
That was a big goal of mine, is to have the Mullen kids come and feel like there were things about Mullen that were meaningful to them. And I know I shared with some of the people here earlier. I went out to a bus about 2 weeks ago because there was a bus issue. We have bus issues. And I went out and the kids were cute. They were Miss Marks, when's the next final Friday? What are we going to do? And the posters were on the play. And the shoe incorporate all of the graders in terms of a choral piece or a band piece, even if they're not part of the play. So we do a lot more connecting the pieces and having those kinds of experiences for the kids that they can feel good about, and something that they're going to remember those 2 years by, rather than just sort of passing through. So thank you. Appreciate that.
If you could just talk a little bit more about the Lucy Coppins Reading and Writing Program.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a literacy program that's already in, say, the Bryce and is transitioning in? Is it a new?
The writing program is in the Bresnahan and is in the Mullen School, and it was purchased last year. And teachers are becoming familiar with the program. I wouldn't say that everybody feels like they're proficient in the program, nor would I say my understanding from other people, other teachers in other districts who use the program, do you become proficient in 1 year? It is a process.
I just wanted to be sure there was some type of continuum, that it wasn't just something that was being introduced
No.
at a couple grade levels, but there is a...
There is, and I'm sure that you'll hear about that when you speak about the Bresnahan School. But the other thing that's important is that Amy and Christina, I'm blanking, I'm Katrina, I'm like, that's what Amy talks about all the time. Christina and I are working much more closely together this year. Christina and I spent the whole day together last Thursday, so I do know her name. Talking about planning and really looking at how we can have much more of a flow between the three elementary schools, because I think that the three of us felt that it's been a little just not a smooth transition, so we're looking at that. And in terms of the responsive classroom, Christina will talk about that as well. She's looking to do that at the Bresnahan as well.
But that's been around for
well, it was.
Where's
Brown School.
That's Brown School?
Right, it was at the Brown
Brown
School.
School.
When the Brown School was
K
K
before.
Right.
That's
And then
when-
it sort
that
of-
was the only school.
It sounds like it lost its impetus here.
Okay.
And it's something I'm a big believer in. I think it's really important.
So you're bringing it back?
Other places, yes.
Okay.
And there are teachers that, as I started to talk about it in the fall, when we looked at the whole behavior and culture of the school, were really on board with that. So we have some teachers who are doing some morning meetings now. I have a fourth grade teacher who does a phenomenal job, and she has 2 significant special needs students in her class that participate in those morning meetings, and it's really something to see. So it's really, and I think it goes a long way in terms of helping a number of issues, including the bullying piece that goes on, and can carry on as you move up the ladder, even what you were talking about earlier in terms of substance abuse.
I just have one final question. What are you using if you don't have a text for social studies?
Teachers do a lot of generation of materials on their own for the 4th grade. The 5th grade does have a text, but the 4th grade does not. And Angela, you can speak
Was
to
that a
that
conscious
little bit.
decision not to have one for?
This is still one of the lingering symptoms from creating the new school. Because remember, our elementary schools were K through 4 before we did the restructuring, and the middle school was 5 through 8. So the middle school had the text when grade 5 was part of the middle school, and the elementary schools did not have a text for social studies. So now the Mullen School is a 4-5 school, and we're working hard to build more consistency with grades 4 and 5 with the resources that they use to teach. So this year, as a matter of fact, because grade 4 came into the Mullen School with the science time. Grade 5 didn't have one because the middle schools taught from kits. So this year we purchased chapters of the text that grade 4 was using for grade 5 to start to bridge some of that work, and we need to do the same work with social studies. So, we've worked on math and literacy first, and now we're getting to the point where we're able to make good decisions around social studies.
I had a parent come through, a parent that was looking to move from out of state into the school last weekend, and we took a tour, and they asked me if I thought the transition process was over with all of the schools changing, and I said no.
We're just
So-
beginning.
So it's not, and as Angela said, there's still some lingering issues. And being new, I'm still learning about some of these lingering issues, so.
Any other comments? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Nice one.
Nice job. Oh, right. Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good.
It's nice to see you. It's nice to be here.
So Christine, could you introduce?
I have two parents on our school council here with you this evening, co-chair Peter McClure, and Peter is actually going to share in part of the presentation this evening, and Caroline Maloney. They're both third grade parents. Teachers were unable to be here. We'll have both parents and teachers at our meeting on next Wednesday. I'm going to really go ahead.
Can you hear in the audience? No.
I can't do that.
I know. We'll try as best we can.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, don't strain.
No, don't.
I won't, thank you. So anyway, as you know, this is a 2-year plan, and a lot of what you've heard already this evening pertains to the Bressingham School as well, as our plans have a lot of similarities. You'll notice that our program categories are the same, as well as our objectives. And even some of what we have achieved is common as a result of the work that we're doing together. And I would like to point out, and trying to be cognizant of time, going down to the 5th bullet, focusing on enhancing co-planning and co-teaching practices. Last year, we created a scheduling committee, and the result of that scheduling committee was that we developed a very strong foundational schedule for all 3 grades. We made a lot of adjustments to our schedule. We, from there, enhanced the block schedule by taking a look at literacy and mathematics. And with literacy at the 1st grade level, we actually have blocked in a word study block. And for all 3 grades, 1, 2, and 3, we have blocked in Writer's Workshop, as well as the regular block. So now we have a full literacy block for centers, for Writer's Workshop, for Reader's Workshop, as well as the word study, to really formalize the amount of instructional time that is expected in that area. In addition, we've been looking at math, and Judy Wojcik said it's absolutely critical for us to get into place a 60-minute math block, plus 10 additional minutes for students to refine and think and problem solve and utilize their computation skills, etc. So we had to figure out how to embed 70 minutes of math instructional time in our day. That took some doing. What we didn't accomplish through that work last year, and I'm hoping we can capitalize on the work from last year and embed it in our planning for this spring for the upcoming school year, is really focusing on that co-planning and co-teaching for special educators and classroom teachers. We've grown a lot, but we have not yet maximized our schedule. And we thought we were accomplishing that last year. And again, we have come up with some challenges in terms of the co-teaching component. More children are receiving support within the natural learning environment or in the classroom, and so special educators are having to be in the classroom far more, but there are still children that require support outside of the classroom. So we're still working on balancing that schedule. So I hope that we'll refine it and have great improvement for next year. I'm going to skip the next bullet and go to the next one where it says last year transition practices. We enhanced our transition practices last year by working as a level with both the Mullen and the Brown schools. But again, we want to capitalize on what we learned from last year's practice, and we've identified 3 additional areas that we're working on. Actually, beginning tomorrow, myself and our school psychologist and our team facilitation leader and hopefully our assistant principal who's sick will be back tomorrow, and we will be visiting the Brown School, we'll be visiting classrooms, we'll be learning about what kindergarten, even more than all what we already know, what kindergarten classrooms look like, what their focus is, and also getting to know the children so that we'll be able to place the names of children with their faces and get to know them over the next few months to ensure that the transition will be smooth, but also that the placement process is going to be right. When you place 500 children every year, you want it to be perfect for all 500. And we do our best, but I can't say it's always perfect for all 500. There's always a handful that we could have done better for, but we don't know that until they're in our hands, and we really know them. Carolyn Wilson, our TFL, who's working between both the Brown and the Bresnahan, has done a really nice job in terms of initiating a copy that's going to be provided by the Parent Advisory Council for parents of children with special needs. To alleviate their fears, they're going to be coming to Bresnahan, they're going to be meeting the special education team and the administrators in the building. And so I think that will ease their anxieties in addition to the typical parent copies that we have for all parents of incoming first graders. And lastly, we're refining the actual placement process. We're going to be giving our teachers a greater opportunity for collaboration at the grade levels, and really focusing on the best decision for each and every child. So I just want to move quickly, and I'm sorry because I know time is an issue. As we move forward down to the comprehensive literacy model, I need to share with you that I've recognized some typos in this document. You will receive another copy tomorrow via email because I am very embarrassed that I've done this evening. We are being trained as by Turk. We have data team trainings that we're participating in, and that's a district-wide training. And then from there, and I'm sure you know a lot about this, we are breaking down into elementary data teams as well as site-based data teams. We're going to be looking at formative assessments, we're looking at summative assessments, we're looking at MCAS type data, and we're going to be learning how to analyze that data and glean from that on how that impacts each and every student and how that impacts our instruction. And so it's very exciting work. I have shared with the team that I think this is probably one of the most highly effective PD opportunities we've had in many, many years. Let's turn to the next page. I'm not going to go over every bullet. The Writers' Workshop. That is an area that we have had some professional development in. Maureen spoke a little bit that it's not quite refined by all teachers in all classrooms because it is a process. It's not a scripted program. It doesn't tell you what to say and when to say it. So teachers have to become comfortable with it. It requires a lot of conferring with children. But that's coming a long way. It's very exciting. I did not go into the same level of detail regarding data that we've collected so far as Amy had done, and I wish I had, but I can provide that to you because we're collecting DIBELS data as well. We're collecting the benchmark data, and we're seeing some really nice progress at our level too. So it's exciting to see what's happening through the elementary years. This is an exciting time for kids to be in our school. Continuing on, we'll go to math because Mark's giving me the report. GMAT testing, I can handle it. So we're continuing with GMAT testing at our level as well, and it's been really cool to see with both literacy and mathematics the interaction engagement between our coaches and our teachers, and having some hard discussions about what do we do with this data, how do we make a difference to move all children along, and then how do we make a difference for our low-performing students. And teachers have become far more reflective. Actually, on Thursday, we're going to be talking about, at the second grade level, really looking at how we can shake things up a little bit at the level and share some of our needs beyond each individual classroom and teacher working with the same group of students all day. Moving along, I won't go through all of the mapping information that's here, but I've highlighted where all three grades are so that you can see what's been accomplished with the curriculum mapping and what needs to be accomplished. And I think the message that I've been sharing over the last months since I've returned is the need to ramp it up. And, sending a message that we really want to be able to move this forward. So, because there's so many more things that we need to be doing, that it's important that the new Common Core standards are aligned and that the process is one that is meaningful for the teachers so that they really have an understanding of what's being asked of them. And so some of that work is already happening. We're actually going to have a professional development opportunity with our literacy coach at next Wednesday's staff meeting, where we're going to be connecting the Common Core to Writers Workshop. So that will be great. And now I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who's going to speak about the last three categories.
Excuse me. So the last three categories are the safe and supportive environment, and achievements have included anti-bullying staff training in the fall, and also in January, as someone else mentioned, there was the presentation to parents on bullying and cyberbullying, Our Kids, Our Community, which unfortunately I did not get to attend because my wife wanted to go instead, and I had to stay at home with our daughter, but she thoroughly enjoyed it. And then on the daily level at the school, the Bresnahan bees are being addressed each day with a morning message from the assistant principal, and as well as Bresnahan school children. And along with that, they're also talking on a daily basis about expectations for behavior in the hallways and at recess and lunchroom, so reinforcing the expectations on a daily basis for the children, which I think is a great idea. And parent and community engagement, increasing the communications and interactions among members of the Bresnahan school community at large. Some highlights from that are, as part of the transition, recognizing with the third years that this is their final year, they have the Make Your Mark collaborative third grade project where they're planting a tree each fall so that third year students, they get to see the tree that they plant and reflect on their time at Bresnahan and where they're going next. And that's enhanced with the reading activity. And also for the parents, there's now a website, the blog, again created by the assistant principal, which is just meant to enhance communication about what's going on with the schools so that families and community can share with that. And then finally, in health and wellness, non-food celebrations continue to be promoted in all the classrooms. And working with the Chartwell's director, students will participate in a fruit and vegetable challenge, getting your plate in shape. Trying to get children to try different fruits and vegetables and to make healthier food selections. And finally, the school is continuing to promote, enhance, and participate in the Massachusetts Walk to School Day in May and Walking Wednesdays in the fall and in May and June.
In closing, I would like to recognize our teachers on the council, Christine Barry, Jessie Craddock, and Susan Westgate, and we also have parent Megan Kinsey on our council as well.
Any comments? Questions? Thank you. This was great. Thank you.
Mrs. Carroll.
They all did. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is youth risk behaviors discussion, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Curl.
Thank you. What I wanted to do is highlight in your packet under youth risk behavior discussion the background information that was supplied to us from Principal Mike Parent. Take a look at the statistics, some data that we have regarding the expulsion hearings in 2009-2012 infractions and outcomes, as well as the high school chemical health rule violation, the number of incidents from September 2010 to February 2011 by month and by whether it's alcohol related or whether it's marijuana related. So I want to thank Principal Parent for doing that. I do, the purpose of this agenda item, okay, is just to have a discussion about what's really, I think, an elephant in the room. Dr. Orlando spoke before us during public conversation as well as during public comments. And I just want to go back to something that he said, I think captured all, but safety, protection, education is something that we should consider Safety is something that Steve Cole has talked about since I've met him and during our first retreat. I will say, I'll add one more thing. It's about responsibility. And I think the schools are working extremely hard to do its part. I think parents are doing their part. Okay? And I'm going to up the ante for everyone. I think students, first of all, we have great kids. Great kids make great decisions. Great kids make bad decisions, and that doesn't necessarily make them great any longer. I think our students need to take responsibility for their actions. They've been raised in good homes, brought up in great homes, come to school and are taught every day by terrific teachers who care deeply about how they perform and how they act every day. So students, got to take some responsibility for your actions. And parents, you do a great job. You got to take responsibility for your sons and daughters. I've said before, you have to have discussions at home during dinner. You have to check their backpacks, check their rooms. You have to have these ongoing discussions every day. This is what we do. This is what we need for us to do. And so I'm going to open up for discussion. I'm going to ask Andy Egmont for Youth Services to come to the table. My parents, principal to come. They're not really making presentations, so I don't want to put them on the spot, but if we want them to make a comment or two, they certainly can. You have the data that Mike supplied, and also just want to make sure that everybody knows when they get to March 22nd, there's a forum for parents to discuss the youth survey as well as youth behavior and perceptions. So I'll just open it up. I'll put it back to you. You want to
I'll start.
make a comment?
I would. I was torn as to what the first thing I wanted to say was tonight coming in here. There is so much talk right now about marijuana in the community, and the Daily News has been covering it a lot. There's been a lot of conversations among teens, among parents, among obviously school committee and different groups. And there's a part of me that feels glad that people are talking about it. There's another part of me that wants to make sure people know that the city's been working on this for years and years and years. This is not new. It's not a new topic. I've been in the city for 7 years. My second week on the job, we started writing a drug prevention grant. Literally my second week on the job. When we have community meetings, we have had as few as 3 people show up to talk about these issues. The last few have been much better. We've had maybe 20 people, and half of them have been school personnel. There is no question that there are people in this community dedicated and aware of the issue and trying really hard to work on it. I was making a list of things that we have in the city. So if you'll bear with me just to talk for a minute before we go on. I think that for the public, they're not always aware of what is happening here. And I had the experience of going down to DC in January or February. It's all a blur now. To the National Coalition of Anti-Drug, the National Committee of Anti-Drug Coalitions. We had 3 of us from Newburyport who attended. And when we started talking about some of the things that we have in this community, other communities are amazed. They're amazed at the partnerships we have between the police and the school department and City Hall. And it is, there's no one answer out there that somebody here isn't doing. There's a lot of trying, there's a lot of exploring, but we have so many great things. We have prevention specialists from every age group in this city that meet together regularly throughout the year to make sure that we're creating a comprehensive program. And that group has allowed outsiders to come in and be a part of that, and to have youth services at the table and the Beacon Coalition at the table. the reason I heard earlier tonight that, you know, people keep saying this is a community issue. This is a community issue. Kids are in school for 7 hours a day. The rest of the time they're not in the classroom. They are off all summer. They're off all weekend. That's when a lot of this behavior is happening. And although things need to happen in the school, we also are so fortunate to have a principal who's not denying that. Communities everywhere have leaders who don't acknowledge that there's a problem. And when I can tell other coalitions that I'm working with principals who not only acknowledge it, but are saying, hey, give us the data so we can use it to change our curriculum. I'm like, holy cow, that doesn't happen. There's so much going on that I don't think people are aware of, and there's so much that's been going on for so long. Kids have been smoking pot for a long time. In the last 2 years, our state voted to decriminalize it. It sent a very loud message to young people that it is not a problem, that it's safe, that it's okay. This issue is so much bigger than what school committee can do, what parents can do, or even what the community can do. I called around to other communities. Our numbers for our YRBS totally, almost exactly in line with tons of other schools around us. It's a change. It's a shifting culture. It is a shifting culture, and it is our job to try to help kids as much as they can navigate through that. And one of the things that I also think we have that is really amazing is that as a community, we have adopted an approach that is looking at the whole child. So we had a group of youth who looked at the YRBS. For those of you that don't know, when we present the YRBS data, it's presented by teenagers who have looked at the data. They go through the data. We give it to them by grade, we give it to them by sex, and we give it to them overall. And once they're in it, man, they get hooked. They want to understand it. And they're not just coming back saying, oh, this is how many kids smoke pot. They're coming back and saying, look how many kids said they're depressed. Do you think that has something to do with how many kids are drinking or smoking pot? They're asking the questions that we all should be asking, which is not just how do we make sure kids aren't smoking pot, but why are they smoking pot? Why are they drinking? What are their stresses in their life? And how do we approach those? And again, that's not just the school's job. That, the signs of anxiety often you're not going to see during the school day, but, kids going home and getting migraines or getting, sick over things. Like, there's so many other signs that can be there. So as much as I know that this conversation is the hot topic right now, I also just think it's so important to remember that as a community, we've committed to looking at the whole child by looking at a positive youth development approach, both in the schools and as prevention, because there's more to it than just how many kids are getting expelled. It's so much bigger than that. And for anybody who's watching, we have coalition meetings quarterly. They're open, they're posted in the newspaper, they're put out there, and people aren't showing up. Unfortunately, my job was created after we had a drunk driving death, a suicide on the front steps of the high school, and a sexual assault at a party. If that's what it takes, headlines in the paper to get people to come, something is wrong. And I want to commend the school committee and the school personnel, because there are people in the community who don't think they're doing enough, but for those of us who feel like we are so fortunate to have the partnership and of what's going on, and that people are talking about it, period. I'm done with my spiel, but I think we're so fortunate to have people who are even talking about it, never mind working so hard to fix it. That's all I got.
That's pretty good.
Stuff. Mike, you wanted to-
Yeah, this has been for the high school, it's been a trying year, and there's no getting around it. It's sometimes you feel like you're running around putting your finger in a dike, and then you're running over here, running over there. I think, one of the key components for me is that we all have limited resources, and until we really get to the scope of the YRBS surveys and have that broken down, I think then we can develop a program or plan to help us deal with the issue. But to go out and just shotgun it and just, try to hit bits and pieces here and there, to me, is not the proper way to do it. And, I plan on being there on the 22nd. I've seen snippets of the data, because somebody only lets me see snippets. But when I see all of the data and have it broken down, I think it's going to give the schools a better perspective of where we're going to get the best bang for our buck, and what programs and what things out there are going to help our kids. And it's not just marijuana. Marijuana is a hot topic right now.
Yeah.
But I've got many more alcohol violations this year than I do with marijuana.
Yeah.
So the topic du jour is marijuana, but it's substance abuse, and it's pills, and I hate to use it, but we met with Mark and I met with the city marshal. Heroin is out there in the community. I'm not saying it's in our schools, but it's out there. So there are a lot of things that are out there. It's scary to parents. I understand that. Part of my job is to try to have a safe school. We have dealt with every issue that we have been made aware of this year. We have dealt with head on, and that's the way we're going to approach it. And when you have students who sit in an expulsion hearing and tell you that they're not going to change their behaviors no matter what you do, that's pretty hard to sit back and say, okay, well, what's my next step? And those are the types of things that we're dealing with, and we've been dealing with this year. And it is not new. I think we've been more aware of what I think kids were doing, and I think we've done better trying to stop the behaviors that are going on. Kids leaving campus, going to their cars, which seems to be where the things are happening now. And so we've been very diligent trying to prevent students from having that ability which they may have had in the past. So I agree with Andy. I've been telling Mark this since day one. I went back, my former high school where I spent most of my career, they published the YRBS surveys a month ago, and they called it the Community YRBS Survey. They didn't call it Keene High School. And I think they're looking at it as a community, and I think that's the only way to approach it, because it's got to be a partnership of all of the participants in order to make any effective change. It cannot just be put on the shoulders of one part of the party. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I hope that everyone here will come to the forum, and I know Dr. Orlando had alluded earlier about putting off this idea of this data and not having it. It's a really important part of our process as the coalition is to involve young people. The data is a tool. It is not our, it doesn't determine everything we do. It's not 100% the truth. It is, and so we use it as a tool to have a community conversation about it. And we need to have teens and adults at that table to have that conversation. Teens who use, teens who don't use, they all, we hear it all once we start asking. And then it comes to life. And once that comes to life, then it's easier to start to address it. We're going as far as to start focus groups, because some of the questions that the teens are already coming up with, they're saying, we need to figure this out. Why this seems off to us. So we're going to start organizing some teen focus groups to actually ask a few more questions that aren't there. And then to have them at the table and say, these are the things that jump out to us. I can tell you, we had a group meet over vacation. We have another group meeting on the 11th. But the group over vacation, I already said, they pointed out the depression. They immediately saw the amount of kids who said that they were depressed and considering suicide. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. There are a lot of other topics that are going to come up, other than smoking marijuana. It's so much bigger than that. It's kids who are getting in cars with people who drive, people who are kids who are driving themselves after they've been drinking, and dating violence came up.
Concern.
Yeah, that was a real concern 2 years ago when we looked at it. So we had some kids who were looking to see if that had changed, and it's so important not to just, part of why Mike joked that I only let him see snippets, but we've always said that the data isn't useful until it's put in a context. So we don't really just release data for the sake of putting numbers out there. We want to use it as a tool. And but we need as many people as possible to have that conversation and to bring different perspectives in.
You know, allowing students to have the ability to talk openly is the other key piece. And, you know, Andy and I have been working the last 2 years of providing an avenue for our students to go off-site to do retreats where they can have
We've been doing 5 years.
open and
Yeah.
honest conversations with the students to get, you know, kind of a different perspective and not just data from surveys, but, you know, conversations with students about, you know, what's going on, what's it like, what pressures are you feeling, what are the issues that are out there, and I think that's another key component of gathering information to make educated decisions on where we go as a community.
I think your first speak out was very successful too.
It was great.
Where really students were asking those hard questions to all of us, and to continue those types of forums, I think it makes a lot of sense for the community.
Absolutely.
So should we allow people to weigh in?
Yeah. I have a couple of things to say about this. Again, just to touch on the fact that, you know, as of January 2009, citizens of Massachusetts did vote for an act to establish a sensible state marijuana policy. It was voted by a majority of people in the state. I think that whole issue in itself merits some discussion. Beyond that, back in 2006, I wrote a letter to the editor of the Daily News, which I brought with me tonight, outlining some of the issues back then at a time where alcohol and drug use, there were several issues that fall with high school students. And I'm just going to touch a little bit on it there because some of the points that I made in that letter, I think hit home and I think are going to provide some clarity. Not that I respect what the prior speakers have said, but I really think drug and alcohol use needs clear professional advice and intervention. Anyway, I'll just touch on a few of these things. Our current school policies do not define assessment, evaluation, and intervention with first-time offenders being under the influence of drug and alcohol in the school district, okay? The second time around, there is a referral made, but if you did an assessment for a first-time offender, such an assessment by a licensed drug and alcohol counselor can provide specific recommendations for intervention. It's an essential tool to treat the student and help protect the student from making poor choices to abuse substances in the future. With such an assessment, the effort begins to prevent the student from abusing substances. Hopefully, the student will instead make better choices. We are all too familiar with the results when students make poor choices. I went on to note some of the issues around this that were in the then Clipper Compass that have since been cleared up, which is a good thing. And the Clipper Compass does, and it still contains today, the fact that upon a second offense, the student will be referred for substance abuse counseling. Again, I stand on the fact that I think that needs to happen for the first offense. Why the first offense? Because students should voluntarily and at their own expense undergo a substance abuse assessment from, again, a licensed drug and alcohol counselor. Costs can be covered by health insurance or by the parent or funded by another thing. I know we have a grant. I don't know if that's something that Beacon Coalition can be involved with, but to me, if you're granted money to solve substance abuse issues and you have money to provide assessments for first-time offenders, and you can show how, by providing that assessment, you've essentially treated an issue, then you're putting the grant money where it counts. Anyway, from this assessment, the severity of the problem can be determined, as well as the course of treatment. As the student proceeds in treatment, the student would be allowed to participate in their school activities, because I think that's another real important thing. You know, when you have kids in school and all of a sudden they're being told that if they get caught doing something, they're going to lose everything, those kids are going to go underground with their issues. You know, they're not going to be available to help, and I think it's going to insulate from them from what would be more healthy. Such an amendment would better assist a student who needs help getting it. Under current policies, the consequences are such that students using drugs and alcohol may choose to stay underground with their use.
This choice is made in fear that they will lose everything instead of being able to freely consider making a positive choice to get help at a critical juncture in their adolescent and young adulthood. And, just to close off in a statement that I think is really reflective of Newburyport, and I think will allow us all to think today when we're looking at a bunch of expulsions and a whole bunch more chemical health rule violations. A close-knit community like Newburyport can become an even more supportive community to our students by including assessment as a part of a response to first-time offenders of the school substance abuse policy. Schools can and must be a point of consequence for students who use drugs and alcohol, and they should also be a point of treatment intervention for those same students while being available to others who are looking for an opportunity to reach out for help. Yes, students and youth deserve a strong message about not using drugs and alcohol. To support the message, opportunities for the student to get help must be included. This will then allow for the student and family to join with the school in preventing substance abuse. Such a partnership will only help Newburyport become a more cognizant and supportive of our students. Consequently, our students will make better choices in handling responsibilities as they grow older, which will help provide a societal dividend for the future. So in having said all this, I also went to the Clipper Compass. This is this year's model, 2011-2012, just to review the memorandum of understanding that has been updated since. And that's, I guess, 6.44. And one of the things this memorandum of understanding calls for is to work with a substance abuse advisory committee, which should include representatives for school-age population, local police, clergy, parents, teachers, school administrators, community agency reps, and a district attorney's juvenile diversion coordinator. And I simply ask that is that group happening? Who's involved?
It's through the Beacon Coalition, Steve.
Right, but is it formally happening right now at a time where we're getting hit with all this stuff? Or are we waiting? Because that's the thing, we have this memorandum of understanding that we work real hard to develop, and it seems like we need to push the button on it.
I've been pulled into at least 2 meetings with the DA this year involving the schools and talking about this issue. And I know that in addition to that, the Beacon Coalition, as Andy said, meets quarterly, but the schools do, and the fact that we've also put in counseling in the schools. So I think that we've made some steps forward that we haven't had in place, particularly the counseling, I think, which is, I think, an important piece forward.
I guess I agree. I appreciate the fact that, but I just think there needs to be more clear action that's visible to people. Because I think that the messages we're hearing from people today earlier was that.
Yeah,
what's the team? When there's an incident that happens, there's
the
what's it called? The crisis team meets. It comes together to the following Monday when there's an incident over the weekend or whatever, and they come together with police.
I'm not doubting that, but as a school committee member, this is a book I vote on. I'm looking at this memorandum of understanding. I'm looking at that we're supposed to have this advisory committee, and I'd like to say, show me the action, show me the last meeting, show me the minutes, and show me where it says more effective ways to promote an awareness of the dangers of drug and alcohol use and abuse and sound preventive measures. I want to hear those things, okay?
Did you hear what Andy said just a few minutes ago?
I heard it, but I didn't hear direct actionable steps. I heard about how she mentioned she went down to DC, she shared all these things that sounded great.
We've had 7 to 8 years of ongoing activities and very specific grants and programs. So maybe you could send.
What are we doing for first-time offenders?
Mr. Cole, the copy of the proposal in terms of all the action steps that we're doing.
What do we do for first-time offenders?
First, what happens in the school is that's not me. That's Mike's question. What our role is as an advisory, as a partnership, is to look at strategies that we can implement. So I personally completely agree with you. I think that some sort of assessment first time would be a wonderful strategy.
You're going to be able to tell whether the kids just use it for the heck of it one time, or if they've got a deep-seated issue, and then you help them work out of it.
Yeah,
and by not doing that, you're taking a step back. Taking a step back.
We have offered parents assessments.
Right.
And if you look at my list on expulsions, it says conditions.
Sure.
And
Right.
some of those things you've talked about are
Yeah.
some of the conditions that some of the students are taking
Right.
back to the high school
Yep.
for.
And people, and that's why I said in my letter, and I'm gonna publish this letter again, I'm gonna change it up a little bit so it fits today, but I'm gonna talk about why, if Newburyport wants to be a supportive community, everybody's gotta join in together, okay? And, you know, I don't expect you to do it all, Mike, I don't expect you to do it all, Andy, but I just expect that, you know, the first time, when a kid uses something for the first time, it's just a critical moment to do the right thing. And to not do anything, or to not offer an opinion that something should be done, is really not taking that action.
I think that, I really appreciate your passion, and I listened to everything that you said. One of the things that I want to step in and just remind people that Andy and Mike are here because they care about what's going on in their school, and they brought data, okay? And that I think some of the things you suggest would be a good thing to bring back to a committee or to whatever, Steve. That I just don't want you to feel that you put on the spot. It's just that passion runs deep, and that some of the things that Steve mentioned, I think are good ideas. But I just want to remind the committee, you know
Steve
that.
has a great perspective on the issue. I mean, we have offered to have assessments to parents. Some have taken us up on it, some have not. And I have conditions of return for some students. I won't get into specifics,
Right.
but it does include periodic assessments of them as they're still sitting in Newburyport High School. I mean, the last thing that you want to do, I mean, if you look at my list for this year, you're looking at, you know, quite a list of expulsion. You'll see that the vast majority of those kids are back in school, but they're back in school on certain conditions. And even then, 3 of them violated the first set of conditions I had, so I had to go to a second set of conditions.
Yep.
So, you know.
And you're giving them a chance, and that's, you know.
We're trying to
right.
give them the opportunity.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
you know, if the student's dealing in school or has a weapon or assaults a teacher, which unfortunately had one of those cases this year, to me, you know, I've got to invoke state law and do what I have to do. It's a very hard decision. I mean, you know, we have spent a lot of hours this year dealing not only with students but working with families. And you know, I have parents in my office who throw their hands up and say, I don't know what to do. And so we do refer them out to people in the community that hopefully can help them as a family, not just as the student.
Ms. McCarthy?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, Andy, that I think that the kids you're working with at the high school level who you're working directly with us, you are reaping the benefits of having come on 8 years ago and seeing this issue. And I knew that that was what was going to happen when you came on board. And I think it's great. I hear what Mr. Cole is saying with regards to we don't want these kids to go underground, but I also hear what Dr. Orlando is saying. And one of the parents in the discussion tonight brought it up, which is what I hear every day. Mom, if you only knew, every classroom has somebody who is under the influence. And Mom, they're the ones that get the attention. And so I think that as much as I don't want them to go underground, I'm getting tired of them being the focus, them getting the attention. Everyone's focused on that. My daughter was out of the country and knew long before I did what happened last week. They all know. Mm-hmm. And but one of the things is I think we could do more at the high school with connections. I think that there are a lot of kids who haven't been the benefit of working with the youth services, but have a lot to offer, certainly have great opinions, but feel like they can't get involved because they're not sure of an avenue. And it makes me think more of and I know smaller schools, it's easier for them to do this, but more of a connection with our teachers, and our teachers being encouraged to kind of look out and pinpoint kids who can be brought to the table and continue to work with you by invitation. You know, I see this kid with this kind of skills. He presents well, he can speak well. We'd like you to join us. Could you help us? More of an invitation, because like I said, I think you're reaping the benefits of the kids that you've worked with, and especially having targeted the middle school, reaping the benefits when they get to high school. But there's so many kids who haven't been involved in the middle school who still have so much to offer. And then that would kind of be diverting some of the attention that there is a group of kids who feel like the substance abusers are the ones that are getting the attention and the time of the school, and that they are being left out. And it kind of made me think too, I know a lot of private schools, you know, there is a responsibility that kids who have violated different policies in the school, they have to face their student body, face their school. They didn't just violate the law, they didn't just violate the drinking law, the drug law, but they violated the policy. Stand up and be responsible to the student body for your behavior and your actions. And it could speak volumes to many of the kids who are experimenting or trying for the first time, and maybe not chronic users, but more of a sense of responsibility that not only did you hurt your parents, not only have you gotten yourself into trouble, but you have hurt the student body as a whole. And I'm not sure that we're doing a lot with that. It certainly isn't in the policy.
It's a great, and it's what you're talking about is just a simple idea. You're pledging. You're pledging to do better, whether it's for yourself, for your school, for your team. And it may sound corny, but I think it's a great thought.
Well, and sometimes that alone would be enough for a child. There are children out there who are experimenting because they're hearing about it. And I've heard kids say to me, I should just try it just to get it over with, so I can say that I have done it. So it would be a responsibility of, boy, did I really mess up, and I hurt all of you people in my school by my behavior. But it would be nice to tap into the quiet kids who haven't worked with you, because I think they have a lot of insight, and they are seeing that you know, they know where the attention is going in this school, and it's not to them, you know, or at least in their mind it's not.
Can I just respond to a couple things? I'm going to go back a few, and then I'm going to get to the point you were just making. Mr. Cole, you had asked about, you know, specifically what are some of the strategies that we're doing right now, and I think that when I say the coalition, you have to remember that's a lot of people at this table as well as people outside of here. There have been a number of things that have gone on this year in particular. I would assume that Amy mentioned earlier tonight that a new curriculum has been, you know, put into the high school, and that was a big step. That was taking, you know, this curriculum that was had been this Mod Podge and coming up, you know, choosing a curriculum that they felt was going to work in the school to address that issue, as you had read in there, about understanding the consequences. So to partner with that, we also have a huge campaign going on this year. We have postcards going out for 7 weeks to families, encouraging parents to sit down. We're giving them a tool to start the conversation with facts about their own community, and in order for parents also to have a voice in saying what the risks are and to say what their expectation is. Because sometimes kids need to be reminded that it's not okay, that mom doesn't think it's okay, the school doesn't think it's okay, you know, whatever the different pieces are. And that campaign is also tying in with rent, and I mean, it has become a very large, ongoing process of being able to talk about issues and have another forum where we will have a community discussion at the play about these issues. Audrey, I feel like every coalition meeting there is some comment about all the kids that aren't doing anything wrong, and how do we acknowledge them, how do we praise them, and I think it's something a lot of people are aware of. So the data this year that came back, and was actually on this week's postcard, which I think is getting mailed today or tomorrow, is that 66% of the high school students said they thought that most of the kids their age were smoking pot, while 30% said that they were smoking pot. So you have the majority of the high school thinking the majority is smoking when it's not the majority smoking. Now, that does change by grade. Dr. Orlando had alluded earlier to a statistic that has come out around the difference between the freshman class moving up and the percentage of seniors that are smoking is a very different picture. And when we've talked to teens about this idea of like, how do you get the praise? It's because on Monday morning when people are coming in and saying, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Nobody's going, oh man, I totally didn't smoke pot or drink this weekend. Like, that conversation doesn't come up. So it's how do you start to shift the perception of the kids? And part of what we have done for the last 7 years is to say, we need to acknowledge that it's the majority that isn't doing it. It is the majority that is not smoking regularly, or some of them ever. And then just to touch on your other point about involving other kids, that is my personal mission. And for those of you that don't know, this year alone we've had 3 youth retreats. When we do a youth retreat, we send out an email to the school and we say, please tell us the kids that you think have leadership skills that are either not applying them or not given the opportunity. And that's who gets personally invited to come to the retreat. And then at the end of every retreat, we say to them, here are 3 things that are going on that you can get involved in. And that's how we recruit youth members. That's the only way we can do it, is to have people acknowledge those kids that they think. Sometimes we've said, hey, send the kids that you think are really strong leaders and that you think really aren't, because that gives us a different mix. Like different retreats, we've pulled in different groups. But I think that as a community and definitely as schools, to find a way to acknowledge the kids that aren't getting in trouble and give them a pat on the back, because there isn't any other, there's just no place for that in their world. That people are saying, good job for not getting in trouble. Like, I think we do it when the kids are little to catch them being good. It's like a real normal thing people talk about. But then as they're older, it's just not the same. It's kind of like, oh, just don't get caught, or just don't get in trouble. But so I think a lot of these points, again, when we have these, the mayor had said that the coalition meets quarterly, that's the large community meeting. There are projects happening, and I believe all school committee members get those emails from the coalition of things that are coming up and projects that are going on. And if you're not getting them, then make sure that I hear that. But we've tried really hard to keep all of our city officials in the loop so that they know what those projects are and what's happening, and that they're invited to get involved in anything that piques an interest.
Mr. Lennon.
Yeah, I'm just going to speak briefly and then vacate and then catch the rest of it on television, I think. I'm glad we're having this conversation, and my perspective on it is that it isn't that we have these problems, because we're like every other community. We have these problems. What we are doing about those problems is really, I think, where the rubber hits the road. I strongly support Mr. Cole's position about how we intervene with first-time offenders. There are a number of options that are actually workable, that actually have data that show that they work, that we have yet to embrace, we have yet to consider, and we also are really clinging to some approaches that don't really seem to work, that aren't really effective. And I'm looking forward to that conversation. I'm looking forward to a conversation about our commitment to zero tolerance and taking a look really at what is the effect of zero tolerance. And for an option that's been around 19 years, there's almost no data that shows that it works. And there's actually a lot of data that shows that there's some very significant problems with it. And I really want to have that conversation. One of the big problems with it, particularly for a community that is committed to using assets, to talking about our assets, is studies show, and the American Psychological Association is opposed to it, National Association of School Psychologists opposed to it, the American Bar Association doesn't think zero tolerance is a good idea. One of the things that it really does is it breaks the relationship between adults and kids. It really does do that. And this is not a new song that I've been singing. When we first considered this, I came out and spoke against the idea that it's not even developmentally appropriate for where kids are, that there's one size fits all. And it's not even, it's just not an idea that works, I think. And I really want to argue about some things that do work. And I know that Mark and Mike and I were supposed to meet about some ideas that I had that are very much in line with what Audrey had to say. The whole idea of restorative justice. When you have a child who is a first offender, have to stand up and own what they did and then understand that they've offended the entire community. They just haven't done any. The rate of recidivism drops dramatically. The studies for zero tolerance have seemed to indicate that a suspension correlates with another suspension. That's really what happens. That the kid's more likely to be suspended again. So let us look at some options. Let's look at some options that the data shows minimize the likelihood the kid's going to reoffend. And that requires rethinking consequences, rethinking what our expectations are, and rethinking how we do this. And I've been singing this tune for a very long time. And I think the time has come now to finally, either get with the chorus or at least let's have it out publicly about what works and what doesn't work. Thank you. And I wish I could stick around for the response, but I'm.
Thank you for lasting this long, Mr. Lee. He fell today.
Broke. But he got up.
I got up. All right, again, thank you. I'm really glad we're having this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it.
Any other comments? Yes.
As I've been listening to Andy, Steve, Mike, Bruce, Audrey, I guess the feeling I have is, yeah, what she said, or yeah, what he said. And I also know what I hear from students. And what I hear from students is a lot of what we've heard, that you can walk into any classroom at any time, at any day in the high school, and there will be somebody there is under the influence one way or another. But I also hear of instances where kids are at a party, other kids show up with alcohol, they say, pour it out. It was a tough decision for that kid. But what was more encouraging was the reaction of his peers, who supported him through that, and who continued talking about it 2 or 3 days after the incident. So yeah, we're making progress. We're doing good things. But yeah, we got a long ways to go. And as I'm listening to this, some of the things we've been doing have worked, others have not. And most of these policies fall strictly in the realms of the site-based high school policy. This is something that needs to be an item of discussion, in my mind, for the high school school council to come to us with recommendations on how to modify that compass, to include some of the recommendations we've heard from Audrey, from Bruce, from Steve, and others that we haven't talked about. I'm not sure it's a solution we can have in a 20-minute discussion here. But it is clearly an issue that we need to continue to address and build it into a focused effort of study, reflection, and recommendation that we've had in other instances through ad hoc committees. Now here we have the advantage that the ad hoc committee isn't ad hoc, it's a standing committee. It already exists. It's a Beacon Coalition. It's been working in this area for a long time. But I do think,
I said we have money to bring in people to help.
Yeah. But I think the point is also right that we've got to take a critical look at what we have got. I take a look at the consequences for behavior, for abusing substances in our high school. And it might not be the letter, but it certainly is the perception that there is a difference in consequences if you're an athlete or if you're not an athlete.
Don't go there.
Huh?
Don't go there.
Right? I'm sure you can defend it, Mike, and I hope you do. I'm just talking about perceptions that I hear in the community. And that's, yeah, I understand it. I see what you're telling me. Okay. But I also, I'm just reporting some of what I've heard from people in the community. And unfortunately, when we're dealing with this kind of issue, you're talking about the perception that 66% of the students are doing pot. When in fact it's half of that. Still not a good figure.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But it's only half of that. But what are people guided by? The perception. And so we need to address, yes, the realities, the stuff that Dr. Orlando keeps asking for. But we also need to figure out how are we addressing the perceptions around here so that people aren't guided by behavior that doesn't exist or misguided by behavior that is happening. And that again, I just think there's a lot to chew on here. And I would like to see that, certainly I'm looking forward to the forum and later on in March. But I think there needs to be another follow-up meeting, maybe with some of the students coming to talk to us here and say, hey, here's some of the thoughts where we think we need to tweak things. Because if we keep on doing the same things, we're going to keep on getting the same results.
And I'm going to say you can't start as a freshman in high school. It's too late.
Yeah.
It's got to start primary grades.
I agree with you completely.
So to put it on four grade school isn't going to work. It's got to be a comprehensive program, K through 12.
I'll take it a step further. You've got to start with the parents before they have the kids.
You have to include the parents. That's when I say community. That's what I mean. I mean, it's a partnership with a lot of different entities within our community that has to join together. I mean, it can't be resolved by high school administrators. It can't be resolved by Andy working with, I don't know how many kids she's got in the Beacon Coalition. It can't be solved with just this meeting here and having people watch it on TV. People have to come on March 22nd to see what our kids are telling us, what's going on in their lives. People have to get involved and come to the quarterly meetings. I'd go to the quarterly meetings. I've been one of the 3 people who've shown up before.
Yes, you have.
So, we always talk about it takes a tragedy to get people out. And we're about not having that tragedy, but getting people out to prevent a tragedy from happening. And until this community embraces that, I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody in this room has all the answers. I wish somebody did. But there is no magic pill to make this go away. And, it's going to take a collective group process in order for this to make any headway, in my view.
I just wanted to say that I agree with a lot of what you've said, and I think there's been a lot of good conversation here tonight, but I don't see this as the appropriate forum for this conversation. It's sterile, it's non-interactive, you're not going to get kids coming in here to have honest and open conversations with us on camera in front of the community. It's not the place for this kind of dialogue to address things like prevention and intervention and get into groups and talk about resolutions and all the kinds of things, the data, what the kids are seeing, the work that's been done for 7-8 years since Andy's been involved in this, and I just don't see that this forum is the place for that kind of work to be done. And I think we get much more, numerous forums I've been at City Hall or at other places outside of City Hall where you break up into groups and you end up with much better responses and much greater participation with kids sitting with parents, not their own parents, and having really honest and open conversations and really making some good discussion. And then from there, to have that next level of follow-up to potentially look at the zero tolerance policies, to look at some of these other intervention strategies that have been brought up tonight, I think would make sense. So, thank you. Thank you.
And I would just like to remind people that the forum that we're speaking of is called Community Conversations, Youth Behavior and Perspectives. It will take place in the City Hall auditorium on Thursday, March 22nd from 6:30 to 8. And we would really like to invite people to come and share their views and opinions and hear the information from that youth survey as a community. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and the next item on our agenda is school choice, which requires a vote from us. Do you want me to continue or do you want to take this? Okay. Assistant Superintendent Farrell couldn't be with us this evening, but for background information, each year the school committee votes on whether or not the Newburyport Public Schools will participate in the state's school choice program for the upcoming school year. This is typically voted in mid to late February. Once the school committee approves the school choice program, the administrators determine seat availability at the various grade levels and recommends opening grades. The school district will then advertise that the Newburyport Public Schools will be offering seats at the approved grades. For example, in 2011-2012, we had seat availability in grades 7, 8, and 9. Once advertised, we may accept applications only for those grades that are available. If there are more applicants than seats available at a particular grade level, a lottery will be held to determine who will be accepted, and the others will remain on a wait list until future seats become available. Notification of acceptance typically begins in mid-May via letter. So what we're asking for you for tonight is that the Newburyport School Committee consider participating in school choice for the 2012-2013 school year, with opening up grade 9 immediately for applications due to the timing of private schools.
Motion to open up school choice for the 2012-2013 for grade 9.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the MSBA update, and Mr. Keown, do you have anything to report, or? All right. So we're going to move on from that agenda item and get into the budget.
Is there any way to entertain a question, general question on that?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
Steve.
I was just curious, with respect to the OPM.
Yes, here.
Right. Mr. Pruner, is it right?
Joint Pruner, yeah.
He and I've met a couple of times. Is there, if you will, I guess I'm just looking for like what his current chain of command is right now. I'm just looking to understand that a little bit better. So like, who does he report to right now?
He reports to the building committee and the mayor.
Okay. Okay. All right. So primarily to the mayor. Okay.
And the building committee, why?
What's that?
Is there concerns?
No, I just want to
Sure.
better understand the commitment outline here, that's all. That's all, okay. And is there, over the last few weeks, there's been a couple letters in the paper about issues with the sandy soil down there being able to support the weight of a 3-story building, which, you know, I think it's important to take a look at.
They've done
Yeah.
all the geotech,
Yeah.
they've done all the soils.
They've done
They've done it all.
Geotechnics.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of money for them.
It's
Oh,
all,
yeah.
okay,
Oh, yeah.
all right.
And we have, I think it's really important to recognize the amazing people that are on the school building committee who have, you know, for example, you know, John O'Connell, structural engineer, we've got engineers, we've got contractors, we've got, you know, attorneys, you know, it's just made up parents of really committed people who ask all the hard questions, and we've had, you know, some very long, detailed meetings to address all of it. I can assure you that all of these issues are being addressed, and that those are the kinds of questions that we will be addressing as we begin the rollout. So,
Okay. All right, no, I just was...
No, it's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I did mention to Tony the letters And
He reads the paper online every day.
Right, well, I mentioned to him the letters, and I just wanted to make sure that, whatever type of geological site survey is someone that's gonna stand up in court, because I just, look down the road to Lynn, was it Lynn Classical, it's in tough shape.
Well, that's why you also have a very different level of involvement with MSBA, with the School Building Authority.
Right.
That wasn't there when it was DOE, when the program was, the building program was under DOE. And, sort of as we compare the difference between the high school project a decade ago versus where we are today.
Sure.
I mean, they
Sure.
go over everything. We
Yep.
probably had, I can't even count the number of trips that, I have been on alone into the MSBA, never mind Steve Burkholm, Tony Pruna, and Deidre, the trips that they have made to Boston to meet with one board or another.
Okay.
On every single aspect is outlined and detailed. So I think that you can be rest assured that piece is taken care of. But I would like to just quickly update the school committee on where we are in the process, because I think that that's important, because things are starting to move fairly rapidly. The plans have been completed for the design, in terms of tweaking the model school plans for the Bresnahan. They have been submitted to the MSBA, and the cost estimates that have been reviewed by Heary International, where Mr. Pruner works and is our OPM, as well as what HMFA cost estimates are within a couple percentage points, which is encouraging. We will have the vote on March 28th by the MSBA, who will approve the plan and approve the budget at that point. And then, unfortunately, because we've had to move the vote out to June to accommodate the architect's evaluation of the Knock-Mullen, they're going to have to just sort of sit in a holding pattern until after the vote in June. The MDS, Miller Dyer Spears, the architect for the Knock-Mullen, has been working diligently on weekends, school vacation, holidays, half-days, and are undergoing their assessment of the Knock-Mullen school, with the anticipation that they will have a pretty solid number to us by mid-April, all in time for us to do intensive rollout of the financial piece in May. Even though we're going to start, there is the community group is doing a meeting on the 8th, where we're bringing people together who are to sort of build the volunteer base to start rolling out more communication about this. We also have to set up a follow-up meeting with the Bresnahan neighbors, because we've had one and had agreed that we would meet again in a month, but we're a little over that month period, but we will be meeting again with the abutters, because I think that that's important, because they are raising more questions, and the media pieces are happening. So there's been a tremendous amount of information. The question for the vote will go to the city council for their first meeting in March, because there's a chance it could go to committee, and it must be voted on before the end of March in order to meet the timeline to set up the ballot question. The senior community center, we should have a pretty solid number within the next several weeks from them, but I'm pushing back a little in terms of the numbers that are coming out, and asking them to sort of, hold the line. And then we have to sit down and have, as a school building committee and as the community group, sit down and have a really thoughtful discussion about what we can really put before the voters in terms of costs, for the 3 projects. So.
I apologize for not recognizing you.
That's okay,
I'm
Vice
sorry.
Chair. I'm taking your gavel away.
I know, you can have it.
No, it's okay. No, I tend to have, Dan sits on the committees, but there's a lot of work that happens in between the committee dates, as well as Dr. Orlando's on the committee also, for that matter.
Yep.
But there's a lot of information that has been happening, just in between those meetings too. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Next item on our agenda is a budget update. And I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Kerbel and Mr. Cole as the vice chair.
I can chip in a little bit.
Yes, of the FinCom committee.
Thank you, Cheryl. let's see if I can just tell you what's happened since we've had our principals. Four of our 5 principals have met with our central office team to explain their school budget. They had gone through a process in which they had met with their school councils, they had met with Angela, they had met with Karen Graham, Director of Pupil Services, they met with Deidre regarding their, we call it G2s, and personnel, salaries, and so we're in the process of putting that together. We met today and look at a draft of what I consider our expenses and take a look at projections for revenue. Okay, and much like the Newburyport has been facing year after year after year, there's obviously not enough money to meet the level needs of our school system. One of the things that I am concerned about, okay, is the breadth of the deficit in which we might have to make up. But it's a little bit premature. I'll know more by, and should be able to talk more about it next week. I know revenue sources should be coming in. I know that there's another meeting for the Finance Subcommittee on Friday of this week. We're just trying to hope. Like I said, the revenue is a little bit premature. I will say some of the revenue that we were counting on last year is gone. So, for example, one of the changes that we had was in school choice tuitions, and that was based upon a particular one student's tuition that we received from another district because that student who was not a district placement was a choice student. Well, when you count on that income for 1 year, it's not there the next. And that was quite substantial. So one of the things that I also asked our principals to do today, we met at 4 o'clock today. We met for about an hour. We talked about what we should be doing as a group and what I asked each principal to think about and to prepare for at our March 7th meeting is to come prepared to reduce their level needs budget and in increments, just so that we can be prepared. And this is no different than I did last year. Last year we did the same thing. I asked them a long time ago to prepare to meet the needs of the students. So that means there should be an increase in their budget and also be prepared to reduce their budget. Something that we've talked about. Now the reality is set. So it all depends upon our revenue in terms of how we move forward. One of the things that I want to bring to your attention is an updated calendar regarding meetings, the meeting schedule. And I want to talk a little bit about a conflict that we're facing. On March 5th, okay, the high school and middle school will present the school improvement plans. Now, I know that Barry Hopkins is not going to speak only 5 minutes, so be prepared. He left.
He's preparing.
He's preparing. Let's see. You can take a look at the central office. Today, Angela and I met with Karen Grant, and we looked at the special education budget. That has been reviewed by Deidre, and also Deidre has to go over issues regarding transportation. On March 7th, Christina Davis and her school council will be prepared to present her budget to the school committee. So there will be a tour at 6:30. The tour won't be really a facilities tour. It will be a tour. It will be a tour to help make sense out of her budget that she's going to present to you. On March 28th, the Mullen School and the Knox Middle School both have an event. that night. So what we'd like to do is talk to you about possibly moving the Mullen School to March 21st. We would have a tour of the Knock Middle and the Mullen School at 6:30. We'd have to adjust the time. Start the middle school budget and then followed by the Mullen budget. That's what I would like to do, unless someone has a better idea.
It's okay.
That makes sense? Okay. What Kathy will do is adjust the schedule, send it out on the Blackboard Connect, and put it on our website, make the change. So we'll do the Knock Middle School and the Mullen School together on March 21st. Steve, would you want to talk at all about?
You know, you pretty much get everything covered. The only thing that I wasn't sure of that you might be more of aware of is what the format, the general format's going to be for those meetings.
Yes, we have a format, and let me just, I think I have it on Angela, you can help me. We've gone through it. What I'll do is I'll send the format to everybody to make sure that you have it way ahead of time. Okay, and what should happen?
Don't you have that? Didn't you write it down?
I did, but I don't have it with me.
No, you don't have it on the chart. I don't think I didn't write it down.
Anyway,
But
I think,
so, still going by memory, I'll send that to you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just send it out to you. Make sure you get it tomorrow.
Now, are these budget presentations being presented by PortMedia? Or are these site visits?
As of right now, PortMedia is not involved.
Okay.
Okay, and that if you want that to change, I can make that happen.
Any comment about that?
I think the whole concept of these meetings hopefully are, first off, to have people come and be involved in discussions with us as we take a look at the budgets. It's a workshop feeling.
That's what I was going to say, rather than presentation. I agree with you, Nick. I think these should be budget workshops, not presentations, because presentation means we're going to sit, they're going to talk at us and hand us a budget. That's not what we're there for. We're there to go through every line item and, ask all the hard questions.
Mm-hmm. So I would say, first off, I would change as the mayor suggested, changing the way we talk about presentations to workshops. Secondly, I think we have to make a big effort to include not only the school council but other parents from that school to come in and join in the discussions or participate. I would like PortMedia to cover them because I think it's another way in which we can demonstrate transparency in our budgeting process to the community and hopefully answer questions of some people who were not able to attend. But I think it's anytime we have an open meeting of this nature that is as significant as these are, absolutely I think we should have PortMedia there if they can do it. If they can't transmit live, they should be there to film it and transmit as they can anyhow. That would be my recommendation.
Any other comment?
Nick, this is a message that was sent through Blackboard Connect to parents and to people who are on our database. It's a message from me. Kathy sent that out, and there's a section where it says principals and school councils will present the FY13 school budgets to school committee at each of their respective schools as follows. And then so it spells that out. But I want to let you know that it says principals and school councils.
Yeah, good.
That goes to the school community. What is going out to the public to encourage participation in these meetings? Have we? Right. So, communications subcommittee?
Yeah, no, absolutely, we need to invite the whole community.
Right.
Yeah.
Just going. So,
It very well could be that Kathy sent that out, through our other media avenues. I'll have to check.
okay, we'll check on that and make sure. So, I don't know what we do with PortMedia.
Okay.
The next item on our agenda is public comment. If you care to make a public comment at this time, would you please raise your hand, be recognized, and step up to our table up the road?
I'm sorry for taking more of your time, but after that lengthy discussion, I have some things to say, and since the only opportunity afforded to people in the audience is public comment, I'll take it. There's a couple of key things I want to bring up about the discussion that just occurred. One in particular deals with, again, an ongoing problem here, and that deals with what Ms. Edmont alluded to, is she made some statements about all the wonderful things that you school committee members have done for this particular effort. I gotta be honest with you, I come to these pretty regularly, and I and a lot of the parents haven't heard of that. So you still have a communication issue that you need to address, because people don't hear that. I'm not an expert on zero tolerance and what that means and what the studies are, but the data is out there. I think you as a school committee have an obligation to look at that data, just as this side of the table alluded to. There have to be consequences, okay? There is student responsibility as much as parent responsibility, and you need to assure that those things are being done. I won't belabor you with reading what the nursing staff of the Newburyport schools put in as an editorial comment the other day. They should be commended for the dignity and the courage they had to make those statements. You can read yourself exactly all the bad things that happen with substance abuse, including delays in cognitive development of teenager minds, as well as poor academic performance of those sorts of things and what have you. But the point remains that you as a school committee need to assure that the policies and procedures that perhaps are in the book, the Clipper Compass, are held, the people are held accountable to, because you have to send them a clear message. The nurses clearly point that out. There has to be responsibility and consequences for any one individual's actions. And so whether it's a suspension from participation in a team, whether it's public admittance or acceptance of the fact that you did something wrong, it doesn't necessarily have to be expulsion. I'm not so concerned about the number of expulsion hearings. And I know the problem is common. I know the problem has been around for years. But there's one piece of information that, again, in addition to all the facts being, once again, hidden and not released, even though they're out there, I'd hate to hell have something bad happen, like a substance abuse death, while we're waiting for the data to come out to formulate a plan to attack what we're going to do to correct the problem. But last year, and I'm a member of the high school council, and that's why 3 months ago I came here with this issue. Last year, or the year before the current year, there were 2 instances. And 3 months ago when I came, there were 10 instances, and if you continue to add to that, there are now 15 instances of substance abuse related issues dealing particularly with drug abuse. Maybe we need to look at the substance abuse in general, but that category is significantly going up despite all of what we're doing. And so I think you need to start thinking about suggestions, which as a member of the high school council I will make, but you know, I think it's partly your responsibility, as I've always said, to verify and validate what is being said here as occurring on a regular basis is in true fact occurring. Now I have some thoughts to share with you and I'll be done with this, but again, it deals with holding people accountable. You talk about professional development. Maybe it's time to get teachers and coaches to recognize what it takes to find out or know that kid who comes in looking like he's in a daze, who all of a sudden went from being an A student down to C student, forgetting all his homework assignments, may have something to do with substance abuse. And maybe our athletes, because Mr. Decanter brought it up, and athletes are a different breed perhaps, not to be treated any differently, but coaches need to, from the get-go, in their discussions with parents and students, just like they do in the NCAA. My son's a Division I athlete. They actually have a full semester class that all the athletes have to go to. And they talk about these issues, and they talk about athletes being held up to a different standard of excellence because they are student athletes. The professional development and all the things I hear about what goes on in teaching, because I'm not an expert in teaching, that goes on to the actual education academically of our kids needs to be applied here. And I strongly encourage you to make sure that there are consequences, to make sure that people are accountable, and that you people as elected officials do exactly what Mr. Menon and Mr. Cole have said. Take a look at what the policies are. I know what's in there. I don't believe what Mr. Cole read is actually occurring. And if you believe it's valuable, then make sure it occurs. If you believe it's invaluable, then get it out of your Clipper compass. And all the other things that are held as consequences for behaviors that are against the rules of conduct that apply to this building, which is city property. So I don't think the burden should be placed on the school improvement, on the high school councils and school improvement plans. You want my comments on that someday? I'll sit down and talk to you on it. It's not what you think it is. There are state mandated requirements. I'm not sure they're being adhered to. That's policy. That's in your domain. That's for you to go find out and ask the questions and get the facts and make sure that things are going on the way you think based on whatever you read is actually occurring on a day-to-day basis in our schools, in our classrooms, and on our athletic fields. Thank you, and I'm sorry for taking the extra time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? We're going to move on quickly. The last item on our agenda is the update of the subcommittees. Ms. McCarthy, could you update us on Joint Ed?
Our next meeting is March 5th at 5:30.
Thank you. Superintendent's goals, Mayor.
We had a follow-up meeting to look at the new rubric that we had put together and went through matching that with what's in the new evaluation that had been released. And I think we all agreed that we had narrowed it down, and if I am remembering correctly, our next steps were that Dr. Crubble would run through the list that was there and sort of give us a couple action steps of what he believes in terms of those goals that I think there were about 15 there, what he believes he could accomplish between now and June, just to sort of give us a, sort of a benchmark. As we said, this year will be a sort of a baseline year, but for this new evaluation process. But felt it was important that we've identified these 15 specific goal areas, but now we need to know, are there some that will not be addressed between or haven't been worked on, and what are the action steps that we should be looking at between now and when we return to this evaluation?
Yeah, I don't know that. I would say not between now and June. I would say from the beginning of the evaluation period.
Till June, yes, correct. Yeah, based on how we framed those new 15 goals, yes. Thank you.
Is there another meeting scheduled?
Not as yet. We were going to wait till Dr. Crowell got back to us with being able to complete that next step.
Okay, so we're waiting. Okay.
March 5th.
Policy committee, Mr. Menon had to leave us, but does anyone else want to update us on the policy committee?
We met. We looked at various aspects of policy. We are working right now on going through the school committee policy manual to identify gaps, to identify areas that are and consistent. We will report back to our committee at our next meeting, which is Friday.
Soon.
Friday the, whatever it is, second Friday in March, is that right?
Right, yeah. Not this Friday, but next Friday.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Mr. Cole, do
Sure.
you think we covered most of it, or?
Well, we covered some. I'll just
Thank you.
I'll just move through some quickly. We did meet last on February 17th, and we were pleased to be joined by Mayor Holliday, who stressed a couple of her budget priorities. One, to try to reinstate some level of foreign language to the schools, and another to try to add some level of electives to the high school. Also, I think you mentioned something about virtual learning with respect to engineering.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cole. I have been asking for a long time that we begin to seriously look at developing strong partnerships with higher ed. I think that there's been meetings. I really enjoyed my meeting with the staff from the STEM and Northeast School Partnerships at UMass Lowell. I think that's where they're doing a whole online engineering class with students in Haverhill, and the students come to UMass at a certain point. Northern Essex is doing a program with Amesbury. I think we are surrounded by a wealth of higher education in Essex County, and where are they? Why aren't they in our schools? Why don't we have, dual enrollment? Why don't we have other types of initiatives going? And I just think this is something that, I really want to see happen in our schools. And so it's a priority for me, and I'm going to keep pushing.
We also talked about the upcoming tours of facility and budget workshops, whereby the process of the principals getting information from sources at all levels regarding their budget preparation, but then ultimately it's going to come down to the reality of how much money is going to be available to implement some of those improvements. And we talked about draft of the budget review and some preliminary numbers on the city appropriation that we hope to have on the 5th. Is that fair? March 5th? Next Monday, all prelim, as well as a preliminary revenue and expense sheet for the school budget, which is basically known as page 1 of the budget. That should be available at our meeting next Monday here on Monday, March 5th. The other thing we talked about is areas of increases in cost, naming union contracts, sped tuition increases, transportation, contract services, summer programs, as mentioned, some added costs because we're not added costs, but loss of revenue due to the ending of things like ARRA, as well as some funding around the school resource officer. And Dr. Kerbel, who also was at the meeting, talked about efforts to try to cap special ed costs, and also has been encouraging principals at the schools to be especially mindful of committing to service provisions during transition meetings, especially after when the budget's been concluded, because if you try to do those after the budget's been concluded, those services are going to be unbudgeted. So he's asked all principals to take care with respect to that. Also, we can anticipate 3 teachers retiring this year. That will probably involve some sick leave buyback. And the mayor also mentioned how, again, she's going to try to have those city appropriation numbers for us next Monday, and hopefully meet, appropriate as much as possible. Fair. And our next meeting is going to be Finance Subcommittee meeting this Friday, March 2nd, I believe, at 8 in the morning.
Communications?
Communications Committee met today. We have made, I think, some excellent progress on identifying what we need to do with the district website. The issue is not in the content, but rather in the graphic design and in the navigation. So we are looking at options on how to correct that. We also spoke about how to put a proactive communications plan together, and that really starts with a calendar
calendar of events, and we've begun gathering information. We are taking a look at various options to have a centralized calendar for the district, but also as part of that, we could have a subsection of that calendar which would be for school committee members only, so we could inform school committee members. We talked briefly about the fact that part of our communication is being there and being visible as school committee members, and part of what we need to do is to make sure that we are aware of all of the events that are happening so that we can be present and available and talk to each other to define, which one of us is going to be at what events that we deem absolutely positively must have some of our presence there for. With that in mind, I will very quickly just highlight the things that I know of to date that happened between now and the next time we meet. Tomorrow night, boys basketball versus Watertown. This is playoffs at 7 p.m. Thursday, girls basketball versus Saugus, also here at 7 p.m. Also on Thursday, the math fair at the Knock Middle School from 6 to 7:30. And then we have our meeting here on the 5th again. The next communications subcommittee meeting will be March 19th at 5:30 here.
We have had an update from the building committee, so Mr. DeCanter, any quick information about the EBC?
They met today again. They're still building. They've had some very good response with our. The EBC has a person that we're working with who is actually making contact with each of the schools, meeting with teachers, finding out what kind of connections they need to make with businesses. Businesses are stepping up. Still have ways to go, but things are moving in the right direction.
Great. And I'll just quickly update the committee on the NEF. As you know, they're in a 2-year capital campaign, and the 3 areas that they have highlighted for us as a school district, World Language Lab at the high school, enhanced classroom libraries K-8, and upgrading technology tools K-12. So they'll be continuing to do fundraising around those topics through 2013. They had a very successful poker night on February 10th that raised money. The next event will be the golf opening in September, followed by the Lighthouse auction in November. And I think that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Do we have an executive session? Could I hear a motion to adjourn? Second?
So
All those in favor,
All
say
those in favor.
aye.
Oh, that was a kind of a given. I'm sorry. Opposed?